Dr. Kale Vorthak pressed his scaled fingers against the observation window of the research vessel, Xanthara's Pride. Below him, a blue and green planet spun slowly in the darkness of space. For 30 years he had studied alien life forms across the galaxy, but this world looked different. It looked alive in ways that most planets were not. "Commander, we are detecting primitive radio signals from the third planet," his assistant Mexla reported from the scanning station. "The inhabitants appear to be in early stages of technological development." Commander Ilex Thornwing moved beside Vorthak at the window. His gray skin showed the ritual scars of a warrior, but his eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had seen many worlds fall under Galactic Council control. "How primitive are we talking about, Doctor?" Vorthak checked his readings again. "They have basic spaceflight, some small colonies on nearby moons and planets. Their weapons are crude chemical explosives and simple kinetic projectiles. Nothing that could threaten a council vessel." "Perfect," Thornwing said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Begin standard survey protocol. We need to establish if they pose any future threat to council interests." The humans, as they called themselves, had built small mining stations throughout their solar system. Vorthak watched through his instruments as creatures in bulky suits moved slowly across the surface of a red planet they called Mars. They looked so fragile in their protective gear, struggling against the hostile environment of space. 3 days into their survey, something went wrong. Lieutenant Amy Carter was checking the atmospheric processors on Mining Station Omega when the alarm started screaming. Through the reinforced windows of the control room, she could see her husband Jake working on the landing pad with their daughter's friend Tim, who was visiting during his college break. "Amy, we've got unknown contacts approaching fast." Jake's voice crackled through the comm system. 3 large vessels, no response to our hail attempts." Amy's fingers flew over the control panel, trying to establish communication with the approaching ships. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child reading about space exploration. First contact with alien life. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement. The lead alien vessel, massive and silver, stopped just outside the station's defensive perimeter. Amy broadcast on all frequencies following first contact protocols that Earth's diplomats had spent decades preparing. "Unknown vessels, this is Mining Station Omega. We come in peace. Please respond if you can understand this message." On the bridge of Xanthara's Pride, Dr. Vorthak received the transmission. The humans were trying to communicate using basic mathematical concepts and simple pictographs. It was exactly what the Council expected from a primitive species. "They are attempting first contact procedures," Vorthak reported to Commander Thornwing. "Should I respond?" "Not yet," Thornwing replied, studying the human mining station on his tactical display. "Run a full weapons scan first. We need to know what kind of defensive capabilities they possess." The scanning beam hit Mining Station Omega like a spotlight. Every metal surface on the station began to vibrate as the alien sensors probed their equipment, their weapons, their communications array. To the humans, it felt like being examined by giants. Amy watched her instruments go crazy as the scan completed. Warning lights flashed across every control panel. "Jake, get everyone inside now. Something's wrong with their scanning beam." But Jake was already running toward the station entrance, pulling Tim along with him. Behind them, the mining equipment began to spark and smoke as the alien scan overloaded their primitive electrical systems. Commander Thornwing frowned at his tactical readout. "Doctor, their distress beacon is generating some kind of interference pattern. Could it be a weapon?" Vorthak looked at the data streaming across his screen. The humans had activated what appeared to be an emergency signal when their equipment started failing. To alien technology, the crude human electronics looked almost like a primitive jamming device. "It is possible, Commander. The signal is disrupting our scanning array." "Eliminate the interference," Thornwing ordered without hesitation. "Use minimum force." The energy pulse from the alien vessel was meant to disable the human beacon. Instead, it tore through Mining Station Omega like paper. The main habitat dome exploded outward in a burst of atmosphere and debris. Secondary explosions rippled through the station as life support systems failed and emergency fuel supplies ignited. Amy was thrown against the control room wall as the station died around her. Through the cracked window, she could see the landing pad where Jake and Tim had been standing. There was nothing left but twisted metal and empty space. Emergency power flickered on long enough for Amy to reach the escape pod. Her hands shook as she activated the recording system, and pointed it toward the alien vessels. Whatever happened to her, Earth needed to know what had killed 37 people in less than 10 seconds. "This is Lieutenant Amy Carter of Mining Station Omega," she gasped into the recorder as the pod's engines fired. "Unknown alien vessels have destroyed our station. 37 dead, including civilians. They fired without warning after scanning our equipment, sending all data to Earth Defense Command. The transmission burst toward Earth just as Amy's escape pod was captured by the alien vessel's tractor beam. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Hayes was reviewing routine patrol reports when the emergency signal reached Luna Command. The message from Mining Station Omega lasted only 43 seconds, but it changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The images were clear and horrible. 3 massive alien ships, a scanning beam that crippled human technology, an energy weapon that killed 37 people, including Jake Carter and college student Tim Brooks, without any attempt at communication or warning. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Within 6 hours, President Sarah Mitchell had signed Military Authorization Omega, placing all human military forces on war footing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Hayes addressed the assembled military leaders, "we are no longer alone in the universe, and whoever is out there just committed an act of war against the human race." Dr. Vorthak stood in the detention area of Xanthara's Pride, looking through the energy barrier at the human prisoner. Amy Carter sat on the simple bench staring at nothing, her face empty of expression. She had not spoken since they brought her aboard. "Commander," Vorthak said to Thornwing, "I believe we may have made an error. The humans were not threatening us. Their beacon was simply a distress call." Thornwing waved a dismissive hand. "The Council will investigate. If they were truly innocent, appropriate compensation will be provided to their government." But Dr. Vorthak felt something cold growing in his chest as he watched the human woman. In 30 years of studying alien species, he had learned to recognize the look of a creature that had lost everything. Amy Carter was not just grieving. She was memorizing every detail of the ship that had killed her family. 3 months later, the first human warship appeared at the edge of Council space. It broadcast a single message before attacking. For Mining Station Omega, the war for humanity's survival had begun. 6 months after the destruction of Mining Station Omega, Captain Ryan Brooks sat in the command chair of the human stealth frigate Silent Arrow. The ship drifted in the darkness between stars, all systems running silent, waiting for their prey to arrive. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, whispered Lieutenant Sam Davis from the sensor station. "Council heavy cruiser, exactly on schedule." Ryan smiled without humor. For 6 months, humanity had been learning how their enemies moved through space. The aliens used predictable trade routes and kept regular schedules. They fought wars like a business with meetings and protocols and careful documentation of every decision. Humans fought wars like predators. "All stations, maintain silence," Ryan ordered. "Weapons prepare kinetic strike package. Navigation, plot intercept course." The alien cruiser Vex High Dominance moved through space with the confidence of a species that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Captain Gorthek's Vane reviewed patrol reports in his command chamber, unaware that death was approaching from the darkness ahead. Dr. Cale Vorthak worked in the ship's research lab, still trying to understand what had gone wrong at the human colony. His reports to the Council had been filed away without response. Command seemed convinced that the primitive humans would surrender after a few more demonstrations of superior alien technology. Dr. Vorthak, his research assistant Telxa, called from her workstation. "I am detecting unusual gravitational fluctuations in the space ahead of us." Vorthak moved to check her readings. Space appeared empty on all their sensors, but something was disturbing the gravity field in a pattern he had never seen before. "Alert the bridge immediately," he ordered, but it was already too late. The Silent Arrow dropped out of stealth mode directly above the alien cruiser. Human kinetic weapons, simple metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, struck the alien ship with the force of nuclear weapons. But these were not random impacts. Every shot was precisely targeted at the ship's engines, weapons and communication arrays. Captain Vane had exactly 17 seconds to realize his ship was under attack before the human boarding pods punched. Through his hull, Ryan Brooks led the assault team through the damaged alien corridors. Unlike the movies that humans made about space warfare, this boarding action was quick and brutal. The aliens fought with energy weapons that were devastating in ship-to-ship combat, but almost useless in close quarters against humans wearing adaptive armor. "Secure the bridge," Ryan ordered over his comm system. "Danny, take your team to engineering. Lisa, find their data core. We need everything they know about Council fleet movements." Sergeant Danny Price kicked down the door to the alien engine room and found 6 technicians trying to destroy their navigation computers. His rifle spoke 3 times in rapid succession, and the aliens fell before they could complete their task. "Boss, we've got their star charts," Danny reported. "Looks like they've got supply convoys running through the Arcturus sector. Regular as clockwork." Dr. Vorthak pressed himself against the wall of his laboratory as human soldiers moved through the ship like a virus. These creatures did not fight like any species in Council records. They showed no interest in capturing territory or forcing surrender. They simply killed everything that moved and took whatever information they needed. Lieutenant Amy Carter appeared in the doorway of Vorthak's lab. She had volunteered for every boarding action since her rescue from the alien detention facility. Her face was calm as she raised her weapon toward the cowering scientist. "Wait," Vorthak said in broken English he had learned during Amy's imprisonment. "I tried to help you. I argued against the attack on your station." Amy paused, her finger on the trigger. "You were there?" "Yes. I was the xenobiologist who recommended against first contact. I filed reports saying your people were peaceful." For a moment, something almost human flickered in Amy's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold efficiency that had kept her alive through 6 months of war. "Then you know why this has to happen," she said, and pulled the trigger. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Hayes stood before a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked confirmed Council positions. Yellow dots showed probable enemy locations. Green dots indicated human fleet positions. The pattern was becoming clear. Humanity was not fighting a defensive war. They were conducting a systematic campaign of extermination against every Council asset within reach. "Admiral," Colonel Rachel Green reported from the intelligence station, "the Silent Arrows raid was a complete success. They captured navigation data for 17 Council supply routes and the location of a major shipyard in the Vega system." "Casualties?" Hayes asked. "None on our side. Complete loss of the enemy vessel and all hands." Admiral Hayes nodded. It was the same story after every human operation. Council ships that had dominated alien warfare for centuries were being destroyed without managing to kill a single human attacker. "What's our next target?" she asked. "The supply convoy near Proxima Centauri," Colonel Green replied. 12 ships carrying military supplies to Council forces in the outer systems. Our intelligence suggests they're expecting to resupply a fleet preparing for an assault on Earth. "Launch Strike Group Charlie," Hayes ordered. "Standard hunting protocol. No survivors. Maximum intelligence recovery." Dr. Vorthak's escape pod drifted through the wreckage of the Vex High Dominance, its emergency beacon broadcasting a distress call that would never be answered. He was the only survivor of a ship that had carried 400 crew members. Through his small window, he could see the aftermath of the human attack. The Silent Arrow had not simply destroyed the Council cruiser. They had dissected it like a laboratory specimen, taking pieces of technology and leaving the rest to drift in space as a warning. But what terrified Vorthak most was the recording he had made during the attack. The humans had not acted like soldiers fighting a war. They had acted like hunters taking apart prey. Every move was calculated, efficient, designed to inflict maximum damage while gathering maximum intelligence. As his pod's sensors picked up the approach of another vessel, Vorthak allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps it was a Council rescue ship, or maybe neutral traders who would carry him to safety. Instead, his sensors identified the approaching vessel as another human warship. As it moved closer, Vorthak realized with growing horror that the humans were not leaving any survivors by accident. They were creating them deliberately. The human ship's communication system activated, and a voice spoke in perfect Council standard. "Alien survivor, this is Captain Michelle Parker of the UES Vengeance. Your escape pod will be recovered by neutral traders in approximately 6 hours. You will carry this message to your leaders. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. Every Council ship that crosses into human space will be destroyed. Every Council world that supports military action against Earth will be targeted for elimination. This war ends when your species surrenders unconditionally or ceases to exist. The human ship vanished back into stealth mode, leaving Vorthak alone with a terrible understanding. The humans were not trying to win a war. They were trying to terrorize an entire galactic civilization into submission, and it was working. 3 days later, the neutral merchant vessel, Free Trader Gamelan, picked up Vorthak's escape pod. Captain Zex Moranti, a trader who had seen 3 major galactic wars, listened to the alien scientist's story with growing disbelief. "You're telling me these humans destroyed a Council-heavy cruiser without taking any casualties?" Moranti asked. "They hunted us," Vorthak replied, his voice shaking. "Like animals hunting prey. They knew exactly where to strike, exactly how to disable our weapons. It was as if they had been studying our ships for years." Captain Moranti poured himself a drink and stared out at the stars. In his 40 years of trading across the galaxy, he had seen the Council's military might firsthand. Their ships were technological marvels that had conquered dozens of star systems. "Maybe you're in shock," he suggested. "Maybe it wasn't as bad as you remember." Dr. Vorthak reached into his survival pack and pulled out a data crystal. "I recorded everything. Watch it yourself. And then tell me if you think these humans fight like any species you have ever encountered." Captain Moranti inserted the crystal into his ship's computer and watched the attack on the Vex-High Dominance. When it was over, he sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Doctor, I think your people have awakened something that should have been left alone." The Free Trader Gamelan approached the Wolf 359 system 3 weeks after Dr. Kale Vorthak's rescue. Captain Zex Moranti had been trading in this sector for 15 years, carrying goods between the various council worlds and neutral colonies. He expected to find the usual traffic of merchant ships and patrol vessels. Instead, he found a graveyard. "By the ancient gods," Moranti whispered as his sensors revealed the scope of the destruction. "What happened here?" Thousands of pieces of debris drifted through space where the Council's 7th Fleet had once anchored. Ships that had been the pride of the Galactic Navy were now twisted metal and frozen atmosphere, spreading across millions of kilometers of space. Dr. Vorthak stood beside him on the bridge, studying the wreckage through the observation windows. "This was Admiral Thranksgorvel's fleet," he said quietly. 43 ships, over 40,000 crew members. They were preparing for the final assault on the human homeworld. "Where are the bodies?" Moranti asked. His scanners were detecting debris from alien ships, but no life pods, no survivor signals, no trace of the massive crew that should have escaped when their ships were destroyed. Vorthak's scaled hands trembled as he adjusted the sensor controls. "Captain, please scan for human weapon signatures in the debris field." The results made Moranti's blood run cold. Every piece of wreckage showed the same pattern of damage. Precise kinetic strikes that had disabled the ship's defenses, followed by systematic destruction of life support systems and escape pods. "They hunted down the survivors," Moranti said in disbelief. "Even after the fleet was defeated, they hunted down every escape pod. Colonel Danny Price led the assault," Vorthak said, reading from intercepted military communications. "The humans call it the Battle of Wolf 359, but it was not a battle. It was an execution. On Earth, Dr. Helen Foster worked in a laboratory buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, teams of human scientists studied captured alien technology, learning the secrets that had allowed the Council to dominate the galaxy for 1,000 years. The Council's faster-than-light drives are actually quite simple," she explained to General Chris Moore during his weekly inspection. "They use a form of space folding that we can replicate with our existing technology. We should have working prototypes within 6 months." General Moore examined the alien power core that Helen's team had extracted from a captured Council ship. "What about their weapon systems?" "Even simpler," Helen replied with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Energy weapons are powerful but require massive power sources. Our kinetic weapons are actually more effective in most combat situations, and they're much harder to defend against." But as Helen worked, she was discovering something else in the Council databases, something that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the war. "General," she said carefully, "I need to show you something that I found in the alien computer cores." Helen activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were marked with red indicators. "These are all the species that the Council has encountered over the past 1,000 years, she explained. "Most of them are marked as extinct." General Moore studied the display with growing concern. "Natural extinction, disease?" Environmental collapse? No, sir, Helen replied. Every single one of these species went extinct within 50 years of first contact with the Council. And in every case, the official records show the same pattern. The aliens were classified as potentially dangerous and then eliminated for the safety of galactic civilization. The general was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Are you telling me that the Council has been committing genocide for 1,000 years? Yes, sir. And according to their classified files, Earth was scheduled for sterilization 3 months after first contact. The attack on Mining Station Omega was not an accident. It was the opening move in humanity's planned extinction. Back in space, Captain Moranti's ship drifted through the outer edge of the Wolf 359 debris field. The merchant captain was an experienced trader, but nothing had prepared him for the systematic brutality of what the humans had done here. Dr. Vorthak, he said slowly, I need you to explain something to me. How did a primitive species with basic spaceflight manage to destroy the most powerful fleet in Council space? Vorthak studied the scan results on his portable computer. The answer was becoming clear, and it terrified him more than the destruction itself. They knew we were coming, he said. Look at the pattern of the attacks. Every human strike hit exactly the right systems to disable our ships without destroying them immediately. They wanted our crews alive long enough to hunt them down individually. That's impossible, Moranti protested. The Council's battle plans were classified at the highest levels. Then how do you explain this? Vorthak pointed to a piece of debris that had once been the bridge of Admiral Gorval's flagship. The metal was twisted in a way that suggested massive internal explosions, but the damage pattern was too precise to be random. The humans knew exactly where our command systems were located. They knew which sections contained our escape pods. They knew which corridors our crew would use during evacuation procedures. Captain Moranti, they did not learn this information during the battle. They knew it before the fighting started. The merchant captain stared at the wreckage in growing horror. You're suggesting that humans have been preparing for this war longer than we realized? I am suggesting, Vorthak said quietly, that humans have been studying Council military doctrine for years, maybe decades. The primitive species that we thought we were encountering for the first time may have been watching us for longer than anyone imagined. On the surface of Wolf 359's second planet, Major Kevin Torres led a team of human Marines through the abandoned Council research station. The aliens had evacuated in panic when their fleet was destroyed, leaving behind computers full of valuable intelligence. Sir, Sergeant Lisa Parker called from the communications center. You need to see this. Kevin studied the alien computer display that Lisa had activated. It showed a detailed analysis of human military capabilities, but the data was months old. The Council had been studying Earth's defenses long before the first alien ship appeared in the solar system. They were planning an invasion, Lisa said grimly. Look at these target lists. Major population centers, military installations, government buildings. They even had plans for dealing with human survivors after the bombardment. Kevin reviewed the files with growing anger. The Council had not made first contact to establish diplomatic relations. They had come to Earth to evaluate humanity as a threat, and had already decided that humans needed to be eliminated. Download everything, he ordered. Admiral Hayes needs to see proof that this war was planned from the beginning. But as Kevin's team gathered intelligence from the abandoned station, they made another discovery. Hidden in the Council's classified databases were the complete records of 43 other species that had been eliminated over the past millennium. Each file followed the same pattern. First contact, cultural misunderstanding, retaliation, extinction. Sir, Lisa said in a voice barely above a whisper, the humans are not the first species the Council has tried to wipe out. We're just the first one to fight back effectively. Dr. Vorthak and Captain Moranti spent 3 days cataloging the destruction at Wolf 359. By the time they finished, both beings understood that they had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. The Council has never faced an enemy like this, Moranti said, as his ship prepared to leave the system. Every species they have fought before was either too primitive to resist or too civilized to fight total war. Humans are neither, Vorthak replied. They have the technology to hurt us and the will to use it without mercy. But there is something else, Captain. Something that frightens me more than their weapons or their tactics. What is that, Doctor? Vorthak looked back at the debris field that had once been the pride of the Council's navy. They enjoy this. When I was imprisoned on their ship, I saw the expression on the human soldiers' faces during combat. They were not afraid. They were not angry. They were hunting, and they were enjoying the hunt. Captain Moranti set course for neutral space, carrying the most terrifying intelligence report in galactic history. Behind them, automated human drones continued to patrol the Wolf 359 system, ensuring that no Council survivor would escape to warn their leaders about what humanity was truly capable of in war. The message was simple. Humans did not just win battles. They erased their enemies so completely that even the memory of resistance became a warning to others. In the depths of space, other Council fleets were learning the same lesson. The war that was supposed to end with humanity's quick surrender had become something else entirely. It had become a demonstration of why some species should never be awakened. Dr. Kale Vorthak stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council on the fortress world of Kepler 442b. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all trying to understand how a primitive human civilization had managed to destroy 3 major Council fleets in 8 months of warfare. High Admiral Thex Gornalu, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin-like armor plating, reviewed Vorthak's report with obvious skepticism. "Doctor, you are asking us to believe that these humans fight with tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare." "I am not asking you to believe anything," Vorthak replied calmly. "I am showing you recorded evidence of what I witnessed at Wolf 359 and 17 other battle sites." The holographic display activated, showing footage from Vorthak's escape pod cameras. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as human forces systematically hunted down alien survivors, broadcasting their final moments across Council communication networks. "This is psychological warfare," Admiral Gornalu declared. "Primitive brutality designed to frighten us into surrender." "No," Vorthak said quietly. "This is how humans fight wars. They do not seek victory through superior technology or tactical advantage. They seek victory through the complete elimination of their enemy's ability to continue fighting." 8 months into the war, Major Kevin Torres led Operation Broken Chain, humanity's assault on the Council's primary military shipyard in the Vega system. Unlike previous human attacks, this operation was not designed to destroy enemy facilities. It was designed to corrupt them. "All teams remember the mission parameters," Kevin spoke into his comm system as human ships approached the massive orbital shipyard. "We do not want to destroy their construction capabilities. We want to turn them against their creators." The Vega shipyard was a technological marvel that had produced Council warships for 3 centuries. It was defended by automated weapon systems, energy shields, and a garrison of 10,000 alien military personnel. The humans took control of it in 47 minutes, and Captain Michelle Parker led the cyber warfare team that infiltrated the shipyard's computer systems. Using alien technology captured from previous battles, her specialists uploaded human-designed viruses that turned the station's own defenses against its crew. "Parker to Torres," she reported, as automated turrets began firing on alien personnel. "We have complete control of the defense grid. The shipyard is destroying itself from the inside." But the humans were not satisfied with simple conquest. As the alien garrison surrendered, human forces began implementing something that Council military doctrine had no name for: technological contamination. Dr. Helen Foster's team had spent months analyzing captured Council computer systems, learning how to create viruses that would spread through alien networks like a plague. Every ship produced by the Vega shipyard would now carry hidden programming that could be activated by human command signals. Major Torres, Admiral Lisa Hayes, spoke from Earth Command. "Begin Phase 2 of the operation." Kevin smiled as he activated the broadcast system. Across Council space, every military communication network suddenly filled with footage of the Vega shipyard's automated defenses, killing their own personnel. The images were accompanied by a simple message: "This is what happens to those who threaten humanity." On the surface of Vega Prime, Dr. Vorthak watched the attack through a telescope at the planet's primary observatory. What he saw defied everything he understood about warfare between civilized species. The humans were not just capturing the shipyard. They were turning it into a weapon against the Council itself. Every new ship that rolled off the construction lines would be a potential threat to its own fleet. Dr. Vorthak, his assistant Mexla called from the communication station. We are receiving emergency broadcasts from 17 Council worlds. They are reporting simultaneous attacks by human forces. Vorthak felt something cold settle in his chest. 17 worlds? That is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed human forces concentrated in 3 star systems. Sir, the attacks appear to be coordinated. Every strike is hitting critical infrastructure at exactly the same time. As reports continued to arrive, the scope of human capabilities became clear. While the Council had been focused on the spectacular destruction of their military fleets, human infiltration teams had been spreading throughout Council space like a virus. Captain Ryan Brooks emerged from the captured alien command center on Vega Prime's moon, carrying data storage devices that contained 3 centuries of Council military secrets. His face was grim as he reviewed the intelligence his team had discovered. Admiral Hayes, he reported through the quantum communication system, "You need to see what we found in their classified archives." "Report, Captain." "Ma'am, the Council has records of systematic genocide going back 1,000 years. 43 species have been eliminated using the same pattern they tried on us. First contact, manufactured incident, overwhelming retaliation." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was deadly calm. "How many survivors from those 43 species?" "None, ma'am. Complete extinction in every case. The Council has been committing galactic genocide for a millennium, and they documented every atrocity. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Foster made another breakthrough while analyzing the captured Council databases. Hidden in their historical records were detailed studies of human behavior dating back to the first radio signals Earth had broadcast into space. "General Moore," she called to her military liaison, "the Council has been monitoring Earth for over 60 years. They have detailed psychological profiles of human military doctrine, studies of our wars, analysis of our strategic thinking." General Chris Moore reviewed the alien files with growing understanding. They knew exactly what kind of species they were dealing with when they attacked Mining Station Omega. "Yes, sir," Helen replied. "And they decided to proceed with the invasion anyway. According to their files, Council strategists believed that human aggression would work against us. They expected us to exhaust ourselves in random attacks and then surrender, when we realized the futility of fighting a galactic power. Instead, we turned their own strategic advantage against them," General Moore said with grim satisfaction. "They wanted a war of attrition. We gave them a war of extermination." Dr. Vorthak received a priority communication from the Council High Command as the reports of human attacks continued to arrive. The message was brief and terrifying. "All military assets to implement Protocol 7 immediately. Total species sterilization authorized." Protocol 7 was the Council's ultimate weapon, used only once before in their 1,000-year history. It involved the systematic destruction of every planet, moon and asteroid in the target species' home system, ensuring that no trace of their civilization would survive. But as Vorthak read the authorization codes, he realized that the Council leaders had made a fatal miscalculation. They still believed they were fighting a primitive species confined to a single star system. The humans had been preparing for Protocol 7 for months, Captain. Michelle Parker stood on the bridge of the human stealth carrier Silent Thunder as it approached the Council's primary naval base at Rigel. Her ship was one of 50 human vessels converging on major Council installations throughout the galaxy. All stations. This is Admiral Hayes. The fleet-wide communication channel activated. Operation Endgame is now in effect. Eliminate all Council military assets. No prisoners, no survivors, no mercy. The attack on Rigel lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the naval base that had coordinated Council military operations for 3 centuries was a cloud of expanding debris. More importantly, every alien ship attempting to escape carried human computer viruses that would activate if they approached Earth. Dr. Vorthak watched the destruction of the Rigel base from his position on Vega Prime. As the reports came in from across Council space, he realized that humanity had achieved something no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had turned the Council's own technology against them on a galactic scale. "Mexla," he said to his assistant, "send a message to High Admiral Gornalu. Tell him that I am requesting immediate transport to neutral space." "Sir, what should I tell him is the reason for your request?" Vorthak looked up at the night sky, where the lights of burning council ships were visible to the naked eye. Tell him that I have information about the humans that the council leadership needs to hear. Information that might prevent the extinction of our entire civilization. But even as he spoke, Vorthak suspected it might already be too late. The council had awakened something that understood warfare better than they did. Something that had been preparing for this conflict longer than anyone realized. Something that had learned to enjoy the hunt. 1 year after the destruction of Mining Station Omega, Dr. Kale Vorthak stood before the greatest gathering in galactic history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council Assembly on Sanctuary Prime had brought together representatives from over 300 species, all seeking answers to a question that terrified them. How could humanity have brought the 1,000-year-old council to the brink of extinction in just 12 months? Honored delegates, Vorthak began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I am the only surviving witness to the true nature of human warfare. What I am about to tell you will determine whether our civilizations have any future at all. In the viewing gallery, Admiral Thex Gornalu and the remaining council leadership watched with growing desperation. In 1 year of fighting, humans had destroyed 70% of council military assets, corrupted their communication networks, and eliminated entire fleets without losing a single major engagement. Dr. Vorthak, Gornalu interrupted. Please focus on practical military intelligence. How do we defeat their ships? How do we counter their weapons? Vorthak turned to face the Admiral with eyes that had seen too much. You still do not understand, Admiral. Humans do not fight wars to achieve political goals or secure resources. They fight wars to ensure their enemies can never threaten them again. On Earth, General Chris Moore stood in the Situation Room beneath Luna Command, watching the Council Assembly through intercepted broadcasts. Around him, human military leaders prepared for the final phase of their campaign. Sir, Colonel Danny Price reported, Operation Endgame is ready to begin. We have infiltration teams in position on every major council world. Our sleeper agents have been gathering intelligence for months. General Moore nodded grimly. The human infiltration program had been one of their most successful innovations. Using captured alien shapeshifting technology, human agents had penetrated every level of council society, learning their weaknesses and preparing for this moment. Admiral Hayes sends her compliments, Colonel Price continued. The fleet is in position around Sanctuary Prime. We can begin the demonstration whenever you give the order. Dr. Vorthak continued his testimony before the Council Assembly, unaware that human forces were already moving into position around their meeting place. The attack on Mining Station Omega was not the beginning of this war, he explained to the assembled delegates. It was the end of humanity's preparation phase. They have been monitoring our communications since their species developed radio technology in the 1930s. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. The implications were staggering. For 90 years, Vorthak continued, humans have been listening to our communications, studying our technology, learning our military doctrine. The primitive civilization we thought we were encountering had been preparing for galactic warfare since before most of us were born. High Commissioner Yelks Thornwick of the Centauri Federation raised a scaled hand. Dr. Vorthak, are you suggesting that humans deliberately allowed us to destroy their mining station? I am stating it as fact, Vorthak replied. Lieutenant Amy Carter was allowed to survive and transmit footage of our attack. The destroyed station provided perfect justification for what humans had already decided was necessary, the complete elimination of the Galactic Council as a threat to human survival. In the depths of Earth's military command structure, Admiral Lisa Hayes reviewed the final intelligence reports from her field commanders. The picture they painted was both satisfying and terrifying. Dr. Foster, she addressed the chief scientist over the secure communication link, what is the status of our technological integration program? Helen Foster's image appeared on the holographic display, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had worked without rest for a year. Admiral, we now have complete access to Council computer networks. Our viruses have infected 97% of their remaining ships and installations. We can disable their entire military structure with a single command signal. And their defensive capabilities? Non-existent, ma'am. They designed their technology for warfare against species that follow conventional military doctrine. They have no defense against an enemy that turns their own systems against them. Admiral Hayes nodded with grim satisfaction. Initiate the demonstration. Show the Council exactly what total war means when humans are fighting for survival. Back on Sanctuary Prime, Dr. Vorthek was describing the systematic nature of human military operations when the first explosions lit up the night sky. What is happening? Commissioner Thornwick demanded as the assembly hall's emergency alarms began to sound. Through the great windows of the chamber, the delegates could see human ships materializing out of stealth mode in the planet's orbit. But these vessels were not attacking the surface. Instead, they were broadcasting something that made every alien in the assembly freeze with terror. The images showed simultaneous strikes on 17 major council worlds. Human forces were not just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying every piece of infrastructure that could support future resistance. Power plants, communication centers, spacecraft construction facilities, even agricultural systems were being eliminated with surgical precision. The message was clear: surrender now, or watch your entire civilization collapse into permanent Stone Age primitivism. This is Admiral Lisa Hayes of the Human Defense Force. A voice spoke in perfect Council standard over the planetary communication system. You are witnessing a demonstration of humanity's true military capabilities. We have infiltrated every level of your society. We have corrupted your technology. We control your communication networks and defense systems. Dr. Vorthak watched the footage with a mixture of horror and grim understanding. The humans were not just demonstrating their power, they were revealing the scope of their deception. For 1 year, Admiral Hayes continued, you have believed you were fighting a war against a primitive species. You were wrong. You were fighting a species that had been preparing for this conflict since 1947, when we first detected your radio transmissions and realized we were not alone in the universe. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Earth's first contact with alien intelligence had not occurred when Council ships arrived at Mining Station Omega. It had happened decades earlier, when human radio telescopes detected the routine communications of galactic civilization. We studied you, Admiral Hayes explained. We learned your languages, your technology, your military doctrine. We discovered your pattern of genocide against emerging species and realized that first contact would mean either your surrender or our extinction. In the assembly hall, High Admiral Gornalu rose to his feet with desperate fury. This is impossible. No primitive species could have maintained such a deception for decades. Dr. Vorthak looked at the Admiral with something approaching pity. Admiral, you still think of humans as primitive, but they have been a spacefaring civilization longer than you realize. Their early space program was not designed for exploration. It was designed as preparation for the war they knew was coming. On the main display, new footage appeared showing human bases on Mars and the outer planets, installations that had been hidden from Council sensors during their initial survey. The bases were clearly decades old, far more advanced than anything the Council had expected from a supposedly primitive species. The mining station you destroyed, Admiral Hayes continued, was bait. We needed you to commit an act of aggression that would justify what we had already planned. The death of 37 colonists was a tragedy, but it was a necessary sacrifice to ensure the survival of our entire species. General Moore's voice joined the broadcast from Earth. Dr. Vorthak has spent the past year trying to warn your leadership about the true nature of human warfare. You dismissed his reports because you could not accept that a species you considered primitive could outthink a galactic civilization. The assembly hall fell silent as the implications became clear. The Council had not stumbled into a war with humanity. They had walked into a trap that had been decades in the making. You have a choice, Admiral Hayes announced. Complete and unconditional surrender, followed by the immediate dismantling of your military structure and the establishment of human oversight of galactic affairs. Or we will implement the final phase of our campaign and ensure that no Council world retains the ability to threaten human interests. Dr. Vorthak stepped forward to address the assembly one final time. Honored delegates, I have studied alien civilizations for 30 years. I have witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of species, but I have never encountered anything like humanity. He paused, looking around the chamber at the terrified faces of beings who had once ruled the galaxy. They do not just win wars, he continued. They redefine what warfare means. They have turned your own technology against you, corrupted your communication networks, and infiltrated your society so completely that you cannot trust your own defenses. High Admiral Gornalu made one last desperate attempt at defiance. "We will never surrender to a species of primitives." "Admiral," Vorthak replied quietly, "you already have." On the main display, a new image appeared. It showed human colonial ships departing from Earth, carrying not conquering armies but families.